Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to our webinar. Today's webinar is titled AP, IB, Dual Enrollment or Honors, How to Choose the Right Academic Track in High School. We are so glad that you're here. Whether you're a parent or a student or one of our amazing Road to College community members, just thank you for joining us. My name is Anna Connery. I'm part of the team here at Road to College, and I'm also the parent of a college student. My son just started his sophomore year this fall, so I know how all of you are feeling right now, as does our co-host today, which I will introduce shortly. I recently went through this journey with my son, and honestly, I'm still in it, so I really understand where you guys are at. But I'm not the only Road to College admin here. We also have our founder, Debbie Schwartz, on the call. She will be listening in and collecting any questions. If you guys want to add any questions to the chat throughout our call, that would be great. Before we dive into the webinar and the Q&A, let's just kind of take care of a few housekeeping notes to help you get the most out of today's session. First, like I said, feel free to drop any questions you have into the chat at any time. If we don't get to them live, don't worry. We review them all and we really try to follow up as best we can afterward. We'd also love to know who's joining us today. So if you want to go ahead and type into the chat the city or state that you're joining us from and what year your student is in, it's always fun to see where everybody's kind of tuning in from. I myself am tuning in from Florida, as is our co-host today. If you haven't already, please be sure to join our Paying for College 101 Facebook group. It's a great place to connect with other parents, to ask questions, and hear directly from both experts and other families who are really going through the same journey you are. You definitely don't want to miss that community. It's a lifesaver for a lot of people, and you get a lot of questions answered really quickly. Finally, do not stress if you miss anything today. The webinar is being recorded and we will send out the replay video to all registered attendees tomorrow, and we'll also post it on our social media channels. So you can rewatch it at any time and share it with anybody that you think might benefit from it. With that, let's get started. I'm thrilled to introduce Allison Slater Tate. She is the Director of College Counseling at Lake Mary Preparatory School in Florida and an independent educational consultant working with students across the US and abroad. She also founded College Bound Florida, a resource for families who are navigating the admissions process. And she's a published writer and a mother of 4 children. Is it 4 or 3, Allison?
Or
Oh, that's right. And they range from grad school all the way down to middle school. So she is also a mom who is in it to win it with you and I. She's got kids that are been through college, kids who are starting college, and everything in between. She brings both a professional expertise and personal insight, and we're just thrilled to have her. So welcome, Allison. Thank you so much for being here.
thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to this community. It's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's great. Usually our webinars are broader topics, but we have found that this is a particular topic that people get a lot of questions. They have a lot of questions about, and there's a lot of confusion around this topic. So let's start out with just kind of a really general question about the fact that many families even they just hear these terms AP, IB, dual enrollment, honors, but they don't really understand what sets them apart. And so maybe we can start with just like a high level overview of each track.
Yep. Sure. Yeah, it is. They're all considered advanced coursework. And I think that that's what's important to remember when you are talking about these different classes. Everything in this category is advanced coursework.
Right.
And so AP is advanced placement. It is a program that is run by the College Board, the same people who do PSAT, SAT, and it is advanced coursework in certain subject areas. They're broadening a little bit to include more vocational style. They're going to be adding a business class. They're doing more computer science programs, that kind of thing. But traditionally, it's been in the more core areas of English, calculus, social studies / history and science. Um, IB is International Baccalaureate. That is an international program that is run across the world. So I have students in Spain and Switzerland and in other countries who are in international baccalaureate programs. And it's another form of advanced coursework. I would say that there is a strong research component and a strong writing element to IB. Um,
Okay.
and that is one of the focuses of the program. But it is really a junior senior program, whereas AP, you can technically start freshman year of high school.
Right.
IB programs often have pre-IB coursework or coursework that gets them prepared for the IB, but the actual IB process starts junior year. And
Okay.
there's a lot of independent work in IB as well. And then dual enrollment or dual credit, as it's called in some areas of the country, is when a student is both enrolled in their high school and enrolled simultaneously, concurrently in a course at their local community college or four-year university. And they're getting credit both at the high school and at the college level for the course. It is taught by certified college professors, whether it's on their high school campus or it's at the college itself or it's online. And those are classes that will start a college GPA and a college transcript, which is that's the biggest differentiator here, because that is a transcript that stays with a student through high school to grad school and beyond. Whereas AP and IB classes, although they can award college credit if you pass an exam at the end, they do not affect a college transcript in terms of GPA or grades.
Right. And I think a lot of people misread that the AP credit only comes A, if the student passes the exam at the end, and B, if the school they're applying to decides to take it. Not all schools take AP credit. It's a very individual process.
Mhm.
Whereas dual enrollment, if your child passes the course, they walk away with the credit no matter what. However, schools that they might want to apply to in the future, they determine the weight that they give that dual enrollment credit. In other words, they might accept it as a gen ed requirement, they might accept it as an elective, or they may say, we don't accept it at all, correct?
Correct. Yes, all three of those exist. Usually, they are the most useful within your state that you reside in. If you go to a state university, that is going to be probably the most helpful for you and the most transferable. But for instance, a private college might not take any dual enrollment credit, might not take AP credit unless you have a certain level of AP score. It just all kind of depends on the universities.
Right. And you have to
Um,
find out that before you just kind of assume that you're going to kind of walk away with the credit. Can you talk a little bit about how schools and admissions committees and even scholarship committees view the differences between AP and IB honors and dual enrollment? Do they put more weight on some versus others, or does it entirely depend on the school?
Sometimes it depends on the school. There are schools that weight honors and AP and IB and dual enrollment the same. There are other school systems and colleges that weight honors slightly below IB, AP, and dual enrollment. Most
Okay.
colleges will evaluate AP, IB, and dual enrollment around the same, like level of rigor, the same level of weight. And if they're recalculating the high school GPA, which a lot of colleges recalculate the high school GPA, and I think that is really important to emphasize because I think that parents and students get very hung up on their high school GPA and what their high school rank is. And that is not always actually important to colleges. And they are recalculating a lot of the GPAs anyway. So that high school GPA is actually not what a college is looking at when they're doing admissions. And so it really depends on the college and on the college that is evaluating that particular application. However, what I would say, I mean, what my advice is to students is that you want to make sure that you're doing the best you can in whatever you are taking. And at that point, it doesn't really matter how much it's being weighed or how much a class rank means or if it's being recalculated or not. If you've done your best, then that is what you're putting your best foot forward.
Right, that's the most you could do, really.
Right.
What factors should students and families consider when deciding which path is the best fit? Because many high schools offer multiple paths. They offer AP, they also offer honors, they offer dual enrollment. But there's a lot more to think about than just is it going to be academically a good fit, right? It also needs to be a good fit in other ways because some kids can become quite overwhelmed
Mhm.
if they take these classes and they're not quite ready for them, or maybe if they start taking them a little too early. So,
Mhm.
what factors do you think should be considered when deciding?
So I think that, I mean, I build 180 high school schedules a year just at my high school alone. And when I'm looking at it, this is the same way I would look at it anywhere I was. I want to look at how my student learns, how they learn best, and what is important to me, priority, like my priority in terms of their high school experience. Because if one of these paths is going to take them off campus, like dual enrollment might take them off campus,
Mhm.
or they might need to take some classes online and they would be off campus for that. I would want to take into account, is my child ready for that kind of independence from the school? And I've seen even high school seniors really suffer from not having the anchor of having an in-person teacher at their high school. So you really want to think about like what that would mean if one of the choices is going to take your child off campus, is
Mhm.
are they ready for that? And that level of responsibility and accountability. And I mean, the most mature, best students in the world sometimes just aren't ready for that. And that's completely valid because these are children and they're in high school. And, I think that that's a really important consideration. IB is a lot of work. Like it's really work intensive. It is really reading and writing intensive, and it is not for everyone. And so I think that a lot of students feel a lot of pressure to be in IB if it's offered at their high school because it's considered very, very rigorous and very preparatory for college. And it is, it's all those things. And I'm a big fan of the program, but it is a lot. And if your student is one that is going to drive themselves into the ground and want to be like perfectly prepared for every class, this is going to place a lot of burden on them. And it gets more and more as it goes along. And senior year, when they're in the middle of applying, and if they are an athlete or if they have some kind of commitment like theater or dance or something that's going to also take up a large part of their time, it is a lot to balance the independent work, the class work, and whatever they're doing extracurricularly. And you have to ask, like, is this something that we can balance in a healthy way? Um,
Right.
and for that reason, sometimes AP is a good answer if it's offered at the same high school because it is more flexible. There's not, if you're not in the full diploma program for IB, like, and you're getting to pick which AP classes you want to take, that can be a lot more flexible for students and allow them to focus more on what they want to focus on academically and maybe not challenge themselves in every subject area, but still have a fair amount of challenge where they want it. It's
So
also,
one of the biggest differences between those two programs is that in AP, you can take one AP class, you can take five, or with the IB program, the entire schedule is built around the IB courses. Is that correct?
if you're in the full DP, if you're in the full diploma program, then yes. If there are ways to do like an IB certificate program, and sometimes high schools offer both, sometimes high schools only offer one or the other. So it really depends on your high school and what they offer and the ways that they let you take IB. But yes, if you're in the full IB diploma program, it's going to be a very prescribed, very there's going to be expectations in place.
Right, right. Now, dual enrollment can sort of sound like a shortcut, if you will, to college credit. But unlike AP classes, the students automatically they earn credit if they pass the classes versus taking a difficult test for AP at the end of the year. What are the potential sort of benefits and pitfalls that families should know about when comparing the dual enrollment to the AP?
So, dual enrollment, I would say that the biggest benefits for dual enrollment are if you are at a rural high school or if you are at a high school that doesn't have a lot of advanced coursework offered to you through AP or IB, but dual enrollment is available, then I think that's a great option to be able to do advanced coursework you can't do at your high school. If you're a student who maxes out the opportunities at your high school, like you're really into computer science and your high school doesn't offer computer science classes, but you can dual enroll and you can get computer science classes there, awesome. But the biggest warning that I have about dual enrollment, and this is a national issue. In fact, I was just on the University of California counselor webinar and the University of California at Los Angeles, UCLA. Their head of admissions made a big special point of mentioning this and asking for counselors to advise their students accordingly, is that those dual enrollment grades are much higher stakes than a high school transcript grade are. Whether it's AP, IB, honors, whatever it is, a high school transcript grade is a high school transcript, but a dual enrollment grade is your college transcript, and it does not go away. And you don't get to just report the ones you're proud of. Like, all of those grades get reported, and all of it carries through all the way to if you're applying for grad school. So I
Mhm.
think it's really important. I think that oftentimes students believe that dual enrollment is easier than AP or IB, and they will take classes in dual enrollment in subjects that they're not as strong in. And I think that that is a big danger zone, because if you don't do well in your dual enrollment class, it actually can have a much more profound effect on your future.
Right.
And in like in our state, in Florida, if you don't have a certain dual enrollment GPA, you're not admissible to the state universities at all.
Is it because they just feel you're not ready for college courses, plain and
There's,
simple?
there's actually a state law, but yes, but at our most selective state universities like FSU and UF and UCF, if they see you have a bad dual enrollment grade, we've shown them how you're going to perform in a college class, and it wasn't impressive. So it's
Right.
competitive enough. I mean, with FSU getting 88,000 applications and UF getting 92,000 applications, they don't have to take you. So you could have
Right.
straight A's at your high school, but if you have one D or one F and even a C in a dual enrollment class, you're not going to show well. Um,
Right. 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 And like, I just feel like we have to reiterate to people, because we have folks tuning in from all over, that it's really important if you choose dual enrollment, especially and AP, to check with the universities that you're planning to apply to, if they even are open to taking those credits before you kind of go all in, and invest on.
yeah. And also to remember, you're not just taking them to get college credit. I mean, you are taking them because you want to show rigor and advanced course exposure to advanced coursework on your high school transcript. I mean, that is what makes you competitive in a college admissions landscape. So.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about honors, because I feel like sometimes they get overlooked,
Mhm.
honors classes, in favor of these other options. What role do you feel like they play in strengthening a transcript, especially if AP or IB aren't available?
Honors is really important, and I do think that they get overlooked sometimes because, for instance, honors physics is pretty much the same curriculum as AP Physics 1. It just AP Physics 1 tends to move a little faster, maybe go a little deeper, but honors physics is a very legit class. And I have a lot of students who will say, well, I can't take honors physics because that's just an honors class, so it's not as good as AP Physics 1. And but I would rather you take honors physics than not take physics at all. And I would rather you have a physics education. The three foundational sciences in high school are biochem and physics. You should have a physics class. And sometimes AP Physics 1 is not appropriate for everybody. So an honors physics class is just as important as an AP art class or an AP class or an IB class. Like, having physics is important. So I
Mhm.
think that that gets lost sometimes. Also, the kids will sometimes think they want to drop language because it's only honors. And having as many years of language as possible is super important for preparing for college, surviving in college, but also college admissions. And I would much rather see you in an honors language course than, like some other kind of elective that you don't care about. Like, I would like you to master your language as much as possible. Mostly because when you go to college, there is a high possibility that they're going to expect you to be taking some language study in college, and you're not going to be drowning as much if you've been taking it longer in high school.
Right, right, right. Well, I'm gonna skip to a question we were gonna ask you earlier, because I saw somebody write in with it, that not all schools offer these. So how do admissions officers sort of take that into account? Like, if your school maybe doesn't even offer any of them, or maybe just offers honors. I mean, a lot of schools that do offer AP classes only offer two or three versus 10 over the course of your 4-year high school career. So it really depends. And so how would you tell them to prepare if that's the case?
Yeah, so the good news is that students are evaluated based on the opportunities available to them. So if your school does not have those opportunities, nobody expects your student to be taking those classes.
That is a very important thing because I feel like immediately parents think that their child is being shortchanged and is going to be evaluated differently. And so you feel confident that that's just not how admissions works?
No, I absolutely, yeah, 100%. And the best very highly ranked prep schools in the country, including, I don't know, Dalton in New York City or Sidwell Friends in DC, where presidents' kids go. They don't even offer AP classes anymore. They don't have IB programs. They have leveled out, like they've taken those kinds of things out of their program and they just teach at the rigor level that they deem appropriate. And so if your school is not one of those schools, but you are a public school or in a smaller private school that doesn't offer those things, what happens is that every single high school, their counselor at my school to be, writes a school profile. And we have, it's basically kind of like having a key to a map. We give the statistics and the parameters of our high school. These are the classes we offer. These are the AP classes we offer. Do we have rules around AP classes? How do you get into AP classes? Are you limited in how many you can take? Are you not limited in how many you take? We put in GPA distribution charts to show how many of our kids have over a 4.0 GPA. It can be kind of high, just saying. And we also show like what our average SAT score is at our school, what our average AP pass rates are at our school, so that when a student is being evaluated by a college, they can look at the school profile and understand, oh, you're not allowed to take AP classes in
Right.
freshman or sophomore year at this school. You have to be a junior or a senior. So you might only take three by the end, no matter how many they offer. Or you have to have a certain PSAT score to be able to take that class, or you have to have a teacher recommendation letter to take that class. All schools have different rules. And so if your school does not offer those things, it is the college's job to know that they don't offer those things and to understand what is advanced coursework at your school, what's available to the student, and has the student taken advantage of the opportunities available to them.
Can parents get a peek at those school profiles? Is that available to them? Especially if maybe their child is going to be a freshman soon and they want to consider what's available before choosing a high school, for example.
Yeah, I some schools put their school profiles right on their school websites. Other schools you have to request to see it. At my school, we have a school profile that is kind of forward public facing, more of a marketing tool for our school. But
Okay.
I have the school profile, and if anybody asks, I am happy to send it to them. But at other schools, you can just Google the school profile or go to their college counseling or student services section of their website, and it is on there for the public. And when I have students in other states or in other parts of the country or in other parts of the world, the first thing I do is look at their school profiles to understand where my student falls in that school landscape and in that environment.
Okay, so they're not, it's important for people to know that because I think they think you're automatically going to be at a disadvantage, but that's not necessarily the case, you know?
No, it's not. They don't
Yeah,
they don't ding students for not having opportunities. They
right,
look to see that students have taken advantage of what they could.
right. Let me ask you a little bit about, as a parent, sort of helping kids find a healthy balance when choosing what is the most impressive course load
Mhm.
that they can select. You wrote a great story, I believe, for the Washington Post not too long ago that talked a lot about burnout and how our kids are feeling more pressure than ever. And I think that this particular topic of choosing advanced coursework is one of the areas in high school where kids really start to feel that college related pressure. And so, with so many choices and so much pressure to pick the most impressive courses available, how can the parents help their kids strike a healthy balance without burning out?
Yeah, it's a hard parenting job, and I think that the biggest thing to do is to love the kid you have and to know the kid you have. And as a mother of four, I have four very different children. And one of them went to an Ivy for undergrad, and the other one is at a state university and, is there on a pathway program. So I have very, very different children who are very interested in different things and have varying levels of academic tolerance, let's say, and ability to dive into academics. And by the way, all of them are thriving and they are all doing so well. And I am proud of all of them so much in what they're doing. But I think that as a parent, and when I'm building schedules every summer, I have kids and parents panicking and saying to me, this schedule won't work because I have to take AP classes to get into college. And I
Mhm.
say, okay, hold on. By the time you're a senior, I would love to see you taking an AP class or two, or whatever is appropriate for you.
Mhm.
But you also need to learn, and you need to be able to learn at an appropriate level for you. And for
Mhm.
some students, that's going to be a lot of AP classes because that is where their level is and where they need to learn. And for others, it might not mean taking an AP class or trying an AP class until senior year, but they need to have the foundation to be able to do that across the lower grades, the ninth through 11th grade. And I've had both of those children. And I have seen how it affects different kids to be in those classes. And I would just say you want to challenge yourself, but not crush yourself. And
Mhm.
sometimes you have to hold kids and say, you have to sleep. And I went through this week with one of my students. He wasn't sleeping. His mother called and said he's not going to bed. Like he's staying in his room all weekend. He's overdoing it. This is too much. Something has to give. So we had a conversation about what would be appropriate to drop so that he could go to bed. And
Mhm.
I don't know. And what I told that student, who is a very accomplished, very high achieving, brilliant kid, was I need you to continue to love learning the way you already do. And
Okay.
you stay on this path, you are not going to enjoy your life and you're not going to enjoy school and you're not going to be a kid who can get as much as he needs to out of these classes. And this isn't doing anybody any good. And
Mhm.
so I think that it's really important to say that college is not as fragile as everyone thinks it is. It is actually really easy to get into college. It's really hard to get into a handful of colleges. Um,
Right.
and maybe those colleges aren't where everyone needs to be. But college is not as fragile as we think it is. And getting into college is the first page of a long book. And we need our kids to be mentally and physically healthy to get through the rest of that book. And we start off by saying, let's challenge you, but let's not drown you. And
Right.
sometimes I say to the kids, I'm so willing to let you try that for a couple of weeks. And then you have to promise me that if this is too much for you, you're going to come and tell me that it's too much for you. And we're going to adjust. And that
Mhm.
happens every year. And I really believe in that. I believe in giving the kids a chance, and I also believe in pulling them back and saying, like, this is not working. And if it's not working, there is nothing more important than your mental health. And if that means a W on your transcript, no one cares. No one cares about a W.
Right.
People care about an F. So
Right.
let's not get to the point where we're looking at Fs. Let's take you out before we get to there. And if you're
Mhm.
in C's and AP classes, you're probably not learning enough from those AP classes. Like
Right.
A's and B's in AP classes. But if you're getting C's, then I have to think that an honors level class is probably more appropriate for you. And the most important, like our goal is to learn, not to get, a transcript with APs on it.
I am so happy to hear you say that because my son definitely felt the pressure from freshman year in high school to jump into AP, and he never did well. He never did well in AP, took it every year, a class or two, never did well. And knowing what I know now, I would advise him so differently if we'd had a do-over. And some kids that were in his class did great. He did not. And I feel that he sacrificed a lot of learning, and a lot of love of learning and love of school went out the window. And so I think it's really important to give people this message. But I also kind of want to ask you a little bit of a tricky question because I know you and I know you're a wonderful admissions counselor, and we can tell that by the way you're answering the questions. But you know, there's different schools have different types of counselors all over the country, and you can find yourself in a school that really pushes AP. And some schools maybe think like, oh, it makes our school look good if more kids take AP. So just tell them they're ready for it. You know, how can parents sort of and students navigate that pressure if they really feel like they're not quite sure?
I'm going to be so honest and say that I have never come across a school that pushes AP. And that's with a large sample size. What I have found is parents who are demanding AP or
Really fascinating.
yeah.
Interesting.
And even in our state, I mean, I think that locally what happens is at our state level and at other states is that there is a push to broaden opportunities to take AP for all kinds of students in public schools. And that looks like pressure, but what it is the state or the school wanting to make sure that no kid feels like they can't take AP, which is a problem. We have a lot of students coming from different backgrounds who aren't encouraged necessarily at home to take AP or to take advanced coursework or who don't think they can do it. And
Mhm.
so there is pressure on schools to encourage students to take those classes because they want to make sure that the opportunity is available to more students. However, in my experience and what I've seen is that it's not usually like no school counselor thinks it's really fun to see a kid drown in an AP class. So if it's not appropriate for them, like nobody thinks that's good. And it doesn't make us look good to have kids in AP classes, but not passing exams and not doing well in their grades or graduating. So I think that if you are in that situation, it would be pretty rare. But if you are in that situation, absolutely, you have to advocate for yourself and say, like, this isn't appropriate for me. And I'm really good with the honors. I appreciate you offering this opportunity. And at the
Right.
same time, I feel like this is a more appropriate way for me to learn. And I don't know of a school that would force a kid to stay in a higher level class.
Yeah, it's good to hear. I think that a lot of times when a teacher sort of believes in you and thinks you can do it, you feel like you don't want to let them down, or your
Teachers
parent
can be
says
that way.
that and you don't want to let them down as a student.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky thing, but it's good to know that, the point of this all is to prepare them for college, not to burn them out before they get there. So,
Yes, the point is to not to get in. The point is to stay once you get there.
right.
Like that's actually the whole reason. And I have to remind kids of that all the time. I'm like, getting in is just getting in. Then you have to go do it. And that's
Right.
like a whole different ball game. And the kids are like, oh, like actually I have to go, like I have to, if you ask my 18-year-old right now, how's school? He'd be like, college is amazing, except for that whole class part. Like having to go like, yeah, he's
Yeah.
not, that's not his favorite part of the college experience, but he is getting through it. And listen, that's a kid who didn't take AP classes until his senior year, but
Right.
he needed to have the time to get to the place where he was going to be prepared for college.
Right. Yeah, my son being a sophomore, I find it funny when he tells me how he's enjoying certain subjects that I know he hated in high school.
Yeah.
And it's funny that now he's enjoying them because I feel like he doesn't have the pressure. He feels a little bit more like, I'm here, I'm ready, I know how to handle this. Whereas, a ninth and 10th grader sometimes just isn't there yet, and they end up not enjoying or learning anything anyway. So,
Your kids. Yeah.
do you there's a lot that's, I feel like, in the world of higher education that's kind of always changing, beyond just these, honors and AP programs, right? Like this is definitely a topic where it's like there's always something new, whether it's a new FAFSA form or a new rule here or a new rule there. Do
Mhm.
you see trends in how colleges are valuing these programs, these honors, AP, and dual enrollment programs? Do you see trends in how they're evaluating them or valuing them? And do you see trends changing in the next few years? Like, how do you feel like families should be maybe thinking differently now than maybe even just 5 years ago?
I mean, everything has changed so drastically every year for the past
Yeah,
5 years.
I
I
know.
think all of us, I'm going to the National College Admissions Counseling Conference next week, and it's always at the worst time of year because this is like the worst time of year for any of us to be not at our schools, whether it's college or high school. But it's also so good to connect with other people who get it and who know what's going on, and just to like look at each other and be like, this is crazy, like, right? This is wild. And it's crazy and wild every year. Uh, I think that trend wise, I think that unfortunately, one of the things that's come out after COVID is that test scores actually have to be part of the process a lot of the time, in one way or another. I wish that they did not, but in some ways, like a lot of things got muddied after COVID. And one of those things is that we have a lot of great inflation in this country. And a lot of the colleges do not feel like they get a solid grasp of what children can do and what they're ready for from their transcripts alone. So a lot of schools are going back to requiring test scores or will be in the next few years. Um, One of the good things about that is that they are getting flexible about looking at things like IB scores or AP scores instead of an SAT or an ACT, which can be some kids do really well on AP or IB exams, but not as well on the SAT or the ACT for some reason.
Vice versa.
Or vice versa. Yeah. So I think that the flexibility in that is good. I think that we do need to know that there is more of a reliance on those things than there used to be. And, I think sometimes there's not a reliance at all. Like the UC system, the University of California is completely test blind, and AP scores can help a little bit, I think, because they do see them, but they don't necessarily keep them as part of their official process. But they don't look at SATs or ACTs, which can be a good thing or a bad thing for a student, depending on what their
What do
score.
they emphasize if they're not looking at test scores and they're not too keen on the AP?
They emphasize transcripts, rigor in the high school transcript, and they also look very closely at their extracurriculars. They have what they call 13 points of evaluation, and it includes everything from academic curiosity or how a student has explored an academic subject to community service to personal qualities in the way that they care for other humans, which is nice. Like, I'm so glad that's part of the college admissions process. And they also take majors into account at the UCs because they are limited in some, I mean, their most impacted majors. They have a lot of students applying for business, for anything pre-med, for engineering, for computer science, like those kinds of things. So they look at that too. They only have so many slots for those kids.
Yeah,
Nursery.
I think a lot of people are surprised when, like you, we do a lot, I do a lot of editing of college essays for Road to College, and I have a lot of parents every year who are like, my kid checks all these boxes, but he didn't get into these top schools. And there's so many different factors. It would be really hard to pinpoint any, but one of the factors is always that you might be trying to get into a very competitive major and they only have so many spots for these majors at some schools. And so, when all of the top kids are going for fewer spots, there's going to be some top kids with amazing transcripts and scores that just there's no spot for them. So there's so many reasons for it. You can't just sort of try to pinpoint it on one little thing.
No, and I mean, only some colleges actually take major into account, and the UCs have to. I mean, UCLA had 146,000 applications last year, so clearly they're going to have to meter that out some way. Other schools don't take major into account at all.
Right.
And then some schools, if you don't get into the major that you've applied for, you don't get into the college at all. There's no second major to evaluate or anything like that. And I think it just what it comes down to is you research the universities that you're applying to, really look at whether or not they're a fit for your student and be like realistic about that. And also just remember that at any school that recruits athletes, 20% of any given freshman class is going to go to recruited athletes. So, and any school that has an early decision round, like probably half of their class is going to be gone after that early decision round is over. You're looking at schools that are with the very low acceptance rates. Those schools have very few beds, and it's a math problem. And they are turning down kids with perfect test scores and perfect GPAs and perfect everything. I've seen it happen over and over again. And what I always have to remind the kids is you will find your place. Like you will find a place, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, Harvard. And I say that with a eye roll because I went to Princeton and they're a rival. So
Right.
go to Harvard. So
But yeah, but like somebody's version of Harvard, like at our state, could be FSU or UF, which are
yeah.
state schools, but they're incredibly hard to get into. So it's like, your Harvard is somebody else's state school. So
100%. Yes. UF is there are students who get into Harvard and not UF. So,
right, right,
like that's absolutely what I have to tell kids in our state all the time is, you can be a Gator. I'm the biggest Gator fan in the world, and I didn't go to UF. And you can get to UF, but you might not start at UF, and that's
right.
also fine and totally valid. And And I think, I'll just put a plug in. I say this every time I speak publicly. The kids who cry in my office are the ones afraid of disappointing their parents.
Mhm.
And we have to do the work on ourselves first. And it's hard because I have been there and I know. But you have to really have faith in the children that you've raised and their abilities and know that as long as they are healthy, they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. But they need to know that you believe in them and that you believe that it does not matter where they go to college, that they will be okay. And it doesn't matter how they get there, they're going to be okay, and that they have the ability to do that.
I love that message. I think it's so important to tell people that, especially when they're about to apply and they're really feeling the pressure and want their kids to be in the best possible situation. So it's really important.
Yeah.
So we have a little bit of extra time today, which is great. There were a couple questions that came through while we were chatting that I kind of worked in already to the conversation because it was pertinent to what we were saying. But Debbie, are there some other questions that we might want to tackle with the time that we have left? Or if anyone wants to pop another question into the chat, please do.
There was just one question, and it might be interesting, Allison, since work at a high school. Somebody is asking if their school profile, they're giving the example, doesn't show certain information. They're saying, it's not explaining all the reasons why freshmen versus juniors, aren't allowed to take APs. How can they influence the school to change the profile?
Be really nice to your school counselor, everybody, because we're not in it for the glamour or the pay. But yeah, I think that, if you can ask for anything as long as you're nice about it. But if you went to your school counselor and you just asked an open-ended question, like, hey, I noticed on our school profile that it doesn't mention the parameters around taking AP classes. How do colleges understand that our freshmen are not allowed to take AP classes? Do you have conversations with the colleges? Do you include that in recommendation letters? Like, how familiar do you find the colleges to be with our system?
Mhm.
And as long as you approach it from that point of view, like, do you think that they understand that from looking at our school profile? Then maybe they would consider, here's the thing, I'm given a lot of freedom at my school. They trust me, thank goodness, to know and to do the research and to do what I can to help our students, that they know that I'm trying to support our students the best we can. Not every administration is as supportive or gives their school counselors as much leeway as I get. And so if your school counselor is like, well, I'm not really responsible for what's in our school profile, but it's this administrator, like maybe you can go have a conversation with the administrator and just say, hey, I'm just wondering how colleges understand our systems at our school and how does that get communicated? Not
Yeah. And we talk a lot about having an understanding of the high school and what's available to the high school and making that information available to colleges. But it's also important when they're applying to schools to look at that school's profile too. What is that university's profile? What is that last freshman class? What was the average GPA? How many took AP? What was the average test score? Because I think a lot of people sort of assume that they already know this information, but it could change dramatically from year to year depending on the school that you're applying to. So it's just as important to check out those school profiles for the schools you're applying to as well as the high school that you're attending.
It is, and it's also important to understand what numbers you're looking at because I'll use our state university as an example, or a few of them. In the mid-range profiles for UF and FSU, when they state their average GPAs or their middle 50th percentile GPAs, those are recalculated GPAs based on their system of recalculating. They're weighted and recalculated, and they're also only including the admits for fall and summer and not any pathway programs. So they're actually admitting far more students than that, but they're not including them in that fall, summer, middle 50th percentile. So I think it's important to look at those and also to understand that they might not be telling the full story or the full picture, and not to let yourself get completely discouraged from applying just by looking at those profiles, because just try and read the fine print around any freshman profile or middle range profile, because they all report things differently. And as the former head of UF, who's now at Rice, Charles Murphy, said to me, what is exactly helpful to share? Like I could share the same information 10 different ways and it would say 10 different stories. But at the
Right.
end of the day, you have to determine if this is a good fit for you and, go for it if you really want to go to the University of Florida.
Yeah, it's really, and it's important to get that information up front so it doesn't sneak up on you later and you're not kind of shocked by it, you know?
So you can create a balanced college list and have, everybody should have reach schools on their list. And everybody should have likely schools on their list. So you need to make sure that you can create a balanced list. Yes.
Mm.
There's another good question because you'd mentioned how some private schools, maybe the more elite private schools for high school, aren't even offering APs and IBs because they're now creating kind of what they feel their own level of rigor is. So how does a college kind of compare a school that is using APs and IBs to a school that doesn't have that? I mean, I know, they're looking at the school profile and they're looking at schools within the school, but at some level they may they have to kind of compare students, across high schools.
They aren't really, though. They're looking at the students as individuals based on the opportunities that they had available to them. And yeah, not everybody is getting in from an area, but that doesn't mean like they're not going to take everybody from one high school. So I think that, and I see that a lot in areas, people will be like, well, which high school should I send my child to? Because where are they going to have the best possibility to get in? And the truth is that they're never going to want everybody to come from one high school. Like they're always going to be looking at different high schools. So what I would say is, which high school fits your child the best? And where is your child going to thrive and grow the best at that high school? Because wherever your child is going to be the best version of themselves is going to be the best place for them to be applying from when it comes to being evaluated by a college. So they're not, I mean, in New York City, for example, Stuyvesant High School is a public school with amazing kids in it, and they have 250 applications to Princeton every year from one high school. And every kid there is amazing. They test in, and then you have Dalton, and you have Collegiate, and you have Burley, and you have Trinity. Like there's all these private high schools, right? They're all great high schools. People are paying an awful lot of money to go there, and they have resources and crazy programs. But at each one of those schools, it depends. They have personalities and campus cultures and, fits for the students. So really it begins when you go to high school, which high school fits your kid best? And then when you're looking at colleges, which college fits your kid best? And listen, Harvard and Penn and Princeton are not for everybody, and they are not good fits for everybody. And I think it's really important to encourage your student to go wherever they're going to be happy. This is their one chance. Their one chance at life, one chance at being a teenager, one chance at going to high school, one chance at going to college. Send them where they're going to find the people who are going to stand up for them at their weddings if they choose to get married, and send them where they're going to find their people. And like
Yeah.
that matters so much more,
The one thing I will say though is that while you choose where you apply to school for college, a lot of people don't have a lot of choices about where to send their kids for high school because
Right.
they're zoned for it or however their local and state laws work. So
Yep.
that can get a little bit tricky. So I don't want to discourage anyone if you feel like, well, I don't have the luxury of choosing the best high school for my kid. It's really about doing the best you can with what's available to you, kind of how we were talking about whether to take AP or honors or whatever. Where am I going to fit in? How am I going to make this the best experience I can have here? So,
I mean, colleges would love to have students from schools that they don't always get to bring students from. And they're always looking for those kids, the kids who are taking what they have and making the best of it and like doing what they can and being, making that school their own, becoming a leader in whatever way is appropriate for them. And that doesn't also always mean being president of the student government. Like sometimes it's just being a quiet leader who sets an example for other students or who is, kind to other people and makes people feel included or asks the best questions in calc class. Like there's so many ways to shine, and there's so many different kinds of kids. And like I said, you just have to love the kid and know the kid you have.
right, right. Debbie, another question maybe?
Yeah, there was one.
I
Let me
saw
just
one
check.
come through like right when we were just speaking.
Oh, somebody is asking, do you know of a resource where people can look at like which schools accept APs?
Which schools
Um,
accept which APs? Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Debbie, perhaps you would like to make that resource.
I know, I
College
know, I
you.
know. I knew the answer, but I was gonna let I was letting you
Yeah.
provide it.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, and I honestly, I don't think it's a necessarily bad thing that you need to look it up individually at schools because I think that you should have a narrow enough, like, you should keep the list small enough that it shouldn't be that hard to look it up at individual schools. But you can look at each school and look for something called like credit by exam or accelerated credit or something like that. Usually it's credit by exam. And if you Google the name of the university and credit by exam, it will usually bring up a chart for AP or IB. Or sometimes dual enrollment, you have to look and see if they have a concordant course. If they don't have the same class at their college, then they're not going to give you credit for that dual enrollment class. And a lot of schools offer things like career readiness or like college and career readiness as a dual enrollment class, and that's not a thing at college because you're at college. So, just be aware that those kinds of things might not translate. But usually with AP, it just depends on the school, and they will have a chart. And sometimes a 3 will get you this much credit, a 4 or 5 will get you more credit. Sometimes 4 is the minimum. Just kind of depends. And sometimes, my oldest child, who is highly academic and went against advice, um, graduated with 20 AP classes. Don't do that at home, kids. Don't do that. And Princeton didn't take a single one. Didn't get a single piece of credit for that. So.
Wow, that is such a big piece of information because that is a lot of time and energy and work that he put in. And
Yes,
it's
but he wouldn't have been at Princeton
him.
without it.
Right.
Right.
That's why he was at Princeton. Yeah.
Right. But there's no guarantee he's going to walk away with credits. It's so important, to realize that. Now, somebody sent in a really good, this is more admissions related since we're kind of touching on that now, but they said, I heard there isn't really a thing as reach schools and safe schools anymore. What are your thoughts? And I think you answer that question, but my instinct is to say it really depends because if you're applying to a school that has a 90% acceptance rate, that would be considered no matter what a safe school. So what are your thoughts on that?
I will say that this year I tried to stop using the word reach schools with my parents, and I've replaced it with the word unlikely. That's an unlikely school. I felt like when I was saying reach, that parents were looking at it as, so you're saying there's a chance. And am I? Like, I'm not really sure that I am. I'm saying that it's really unlikely that you end up going to school there. And, when we're talking about Duke and a 3.97% regular decision acceptance rate, like, yeah, it's probably really unlikely that you're going there. Anybody is going
Right.
there. And I think that for safe, or I like to call them likelier schools, the problem is, again, in perception. And I think that a lot of parents are like, well, yeah, they could get in there, but I don't want them to go there. And so, again, I say we all have to do work on ourselves first. And we have to say, the colleges that we considered 30 years ago, perhaps in the late 1900s, speaking for myself, we applied to college and the internet was not born. Perhaps we had perceptions about colleges that are no longer accurate, and that there are schools that, Northeastern, I believe in the late 1900s, was not considered a hard school to get into. And now that they have 107,000 applications a year, sure, yes, it's hard to get into because
That
there's
is so true.
107,000
I
spaces.
went to high school, there was at senior year, they introduced AP and there was one option, AP US history, and that was it. And I went to Florida State University, which is now a very hard school to get into. And I can tell you that back in the day, it was not hard to get into at all. So you
No.
can't really apply. If you did go to college and now you're guiding your child, you really have to like kind of forget everything you remember and try to educate yourself all over again to help them.
Yeah.
Um,
Parents
Can
say,
I
"What's
ask,
it like when I was in high school?" And I'm like, yeah, well, my hair is a different color and I used to have a pelvic floor, you guys.
yeah.
Change. Like,
Change, yeah. That's funny.
there was another question earlier, which I forgot to ask, which I thought was interesting. Somebody was asking, what if their school doesn't offer many honors classes? Should the student look at taking an online, an honors class from an accredited online high school?
I mean, if you want me to get on my personal soapbox, I don't believe that online learning is all that valuable.
I,
Um,
I'm with you on that, and I work in the space, so I agree. Yeah.
it's very hard. And that's not shading online curriculum.
Some schools excel, some students excel at it, and it's great, but I'm just saying that it's not how most people absorb information really well.
Right. I think that that online curriculum can be great. I think that online teachers can be great, but it's not a style of teaching that lends itself to direct education very well. And so if it's a class that a child needs to actually learn and build a foundation on, it is not my favorite mode of instruction. What I would say is have a conversation with your school and your school counselor about how they can challenge themselves. And again, some schools just don't level their classes that way, but they have appropriate levels of rigor built in or baked into their classes. So ask them, how does this prepare my child for college? Are these college preparatory courses? If they're not, how can I have my child get exposed to those courses or get more advanced coursework that might be through an online program, although it's not my favorite, but it also there might be dual enrollment nearby, or you might be able to find an enrichment course of some description. But I would say I always favor in-person learning when it's available. And I
Yeah.
think college do too, honestly, because the biggest issue, and this is something that everybody should keep in mind, when colleges are evaluating applications, they are keeping two numbers in mind in their head at all times. The first is their freshman retention rate. How many of their freshmen are going to make it to sophomore year? And there's a lot of factors that come into play with that, but a lot of it is academic preparation.
Mm-hmm.
And do they know math? And can they read and write? And that is a big question post-COVID. So that is definitely high on their minds. Second is their graduation rate. And they want these kids to come to their colleges. They want them to make it to sophomore year, and then they want them to graduate. And they want them to preferably graduate in 4 years, if not 6 years. So
Right.
those two numbers are so key. And so you need to be asking yourselves, is this preparing my student to be able to make it through freshman year, which is hard for everyone, no matter what? It's a transition. It's a whole different level of coursework. It's a different level of expectation. And then secondly, is this preparing my child to be successful in a 4-year program where they can keep up this math? I have so many kids who want to do computer science. Do you know how much math is in computer science? Like so much math and
Yeah.
high level math. And sometimes kids who are in algebra 2, their senior year of high school, they can do it. I'm not going to tell anybody that they can't do something, but I'm going to say, let's be realistic and let's think about how they get there.
Right, right, right. So true. Thank you so much. This has been amazing, Allison. Thank you for your time and your incredible insight today. And thank you to everyone who joined us. We hope you're walking away with a few clearer answers, especially about these more challenging courses available to high school students, and hopefully some fresh ideas and a little bit of insight into how those courses can impact the application process once you're ready to start applying. If you haven't already, please be sure to join our Paying for College 101 Facebook group for even more.
Anna, you want to just put a plug to like the next event that's coming?
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, no, about that we're organizing about the 3-year
Oh,
programs.
yes. We're going to be doing another webinar about 3-year programs at universities, which is another growing trend, and talking about, we have webinars coming up on transferring schools, which I'm sure you probably have a lot to say about too, Allison, because you made a point earlier that like, just because you start at one school doesn't mean you have to finish. Sometimes it's easier to get into really competitive programs later, a lot easier, exactly. So we've got a lot coming up. Please check the roadtocollege.com website, check our
And your
event
emails.
and your emails if you're on our email list already, which if you're here, you are, you should be getting notices about it. So keep an eye out for those. If you missed anything today, we're going to be resending the replay tomorrow, as we said, so you can revisit anything that we shared. And thank you again, Allison. You've been wonderful. We hope to see you again at one of our webinars soon.
Yes, I'll see you across town. So,
Yes. Have a great day, everybody.
bye.
Bye.